Welcome to our annual Wine Excellence Awards, Howard announced, his voice booming across the elegant ballroom of the Grand Meridian Hotel. Today marks an exciting new chapter in our family's legacy. We're thrilled to announce that Vanessa, fresh from completing her MBA, will be taking over as CEO of River's Edge Vineyard. The crowd erupted into enthusiastic applause while I sat frozen, my wine glass suspended halfway to my lips. My heart pounded against my ribs. A shock washed over me like an icy wave. 8 months ago, I transferred my entire life savings to save this vineyard from foreclosure. Now I watched my younger sister step forward, radiant in her designer gown. That screamed brand ambassador, having never worked a single day among the vines that had been my second home since childhood. My name is Elaine and I'm 35 years old. I've built my agricultural economics consulting firm from nothing, growing it into a respected business without ever asking my parents for a dime. The soil beneath my fingernails felt more familiar than manicured hands ever could. While Vanessa was getting her MBA paid for by her parents, I was working 60-hour weeks analyzing crop yields and market trends, learning the real meaning of dedication to the land. The memory of my grandfather William teaching me to test soil pH still lingered in my mind as vividly as yesterday. That's why when they called me sobbing about the bank's foreclosure notice 8 months ago, I transferred $850,000, my entire life savings, without a moment's hesitation. We're family, they'd said, voices cracking with emotion. We trust each other completely. With her exceptional business education and fresh perspective, Howard continued, his chest puffed with pride. Vanessa will lead River's Edge into a bold new era of innovation and market growth. She has the perfect combination of formal education and deep understanding of our family's rich legacy. I watched Vanessa bask in the shower of congratulations, my stomach twisting into knots. The same sister who'd spent her college years staging Instagram photo shoots with our estate as backdrop rather than learning about soil composition or fermentation techniques. The same sister whose eyes had glazed over whenever I tried to explain the difference between our soil types. The same sister who couldn't distinguish our Cabernet from our Merlot in a blind tasting last Christmas and laughed it off as not important for the CEO. Diana touched my arm gently, her perfectly manicured nails lightly pressing into my skin. Elaine, honey, I hope you understand, she whispered, with that familiar placating tone I'd grown to resent. Vanessa's degree makes her the natural choice to handle the business side. The banks respect formal credentials. I cut her off with a warm smile that didn't reach my eyes. Of course, Mom. Vanessa will do great. I raised my glass in a toast, keeping my voice steady despite the bitter cold spreading through my chest, like a February frost on young vines. To the new CEO of River's Edge, a wine journalist who had interviewed me earlier approached, with confusion etched on his face. I thought you would be the next in line, given your industry reputation, he whispered. With a practiced smile, I excused myself, needing escape from the suffocating room. I stepped out onto the terrace into the cool evening air, my hands trembling with suppressed rage. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to a contact I hadn't expected to need. Naomi Westfield, the formidable corporate attorney I'd met at several agricultural investment conferences. I need your help with a family business matter that's gone sideways, I texted, my thumb hovering over the send button for just a moment before pressing down. Are you free to meet tomorrow? It's urgent and confidential. Her response came within seconds. 8 p.m. tomorrow. The reserve room at Blackwell Steakhouse. Private and discreet. Bring any and all documentation you have. And Elaine? I'm sorry you need me for this. The private dining room at Blackwell Steakhouse exuded quiet luxury, with dark wood paneling and soft lighting that cast dramatic shadows across the space. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the twinkling lights of downtown Dallas created a glittering backdrop. Naomi Westfield sat across from me, her sharp eyes analyzing the bank statements showing my $850,000 transferred to River's Edge Vineyard's account as methodically as a sommelier might evaluate a rare vintage. Let me get this straight, she said, looking up from the documents with an expression of disbelief that made my stomach clench. You transferred your entire life savings without any written agreement whatsoever. Not even a basic promissory note or email confirmation of terms? I felt heat rush to my face as embarrassment mingled with my anger. They're my family, I replied, the words tasting bitter as over oak Chardonnay. When Howard called about the foreclosure notice, his voice breaking, all I could think about was saving our legacy. My grandfather William's life work, about to be erased because they'd over-leveraged the property for Vanessa's MBA program, and that absurd new tasting room she insisted they needed to elevate the brand experience. Naomi's fingers drummed once on the polished table before she reached for her wine glass. And now, they've made her CEO despite your investment literally saving the Vineyard from bankruptcy. She paused, then added with a pointed look, tell me exactly about the day you transferred the money. What specifically did Howard promise you? I closed my eyes, the memory washing over me like a cold shower. Howard said I'd be taken care of, that my investment would secure my place. In the family business, he mentioned partnership several times. Diana was crying, clutching my hand, talking about how they'd make it up to me, and how family stands together. I can still feel the relief in their voices when I agreed to help. I opened my eyes, feeling the hot burn of anger rising in my chest like heartburn. Instead, they're acting like my contribution was just a daughter's duty, something expected rather than the financial lifeline it actually was. Did anyone else witness these conversations? Naomi asked, reaching for her leather portfolio. Yes, I said, sitting up straighter as renewed hope coursed through me. Their accountant, Trevor, was there when I visited to arrange the transfer. I remember how uncomfortable he looked during the whole conversation. He kept suggesting we put something in writing. Howard dismissed him rather harshly, saying it would insult the family trust and that we don't need paperwork between blood. Naomi's eyes gleamed with the predatory focus of someone who just spotted a strategic advantage. Trevor could be extremely valuable to our case. But first, I need to understand your ideal outcome here. Do you want control of River's Edge? A board position? What's your endgame? I shook my head firmly, surprising myself with how clear my answer was. I want my investment back with full interest. Let Vanessa have her fancy CEO title and corner office. I'll start my own vineyard with my money. One they'll have to compete with on quality rather than Instagram followers. Good. Naomi smiled, a gesture that transformed her serious face into something almost wolfish. Because I have a comprehensive plan. Your parents' actions constitute textbook verbal fraud with multiple witnesses. With Trevor's testimony and these meticulous bank records you've kept, we can build an extremely strong case. But instead of filing immediately, we'll send a formal demand letter first. One that outlines precisely how their actions could be interpreted as deliberate financial manipulation by both the courts and the wine industry press. She pulled out an elegant fountain pen and opened her leather-bound notepad. We demand full repayment of your $850,000 plus 8% annual interest within 30 days. We'll also request complete financial records covering every transaction since your investment. I suspect we'll find some fascinating decisions made after they received your money. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, like removing a heavy backpack after a long day in the vineyard. And if they refuse to comply, then we file a lawsuit that will open their books to complete public scrutiny. Naomi replied with cool confidence. Something tells me your sister's prestigious. MBA hasn't prepared her for that kind of crisis management or the industry reputation damage that would follow. The demand letter landed like a sudden frost in late spring at River's Edge. I was reviewing crop yield projections in my downtown apartment when my phone exploded with notifications. Vanessa's name flashed on the screen, and I took a deep breath before answering. A lawsuit? Have you completely lost your mind? Her voice vibrated with panic, high-pitched and frantic. You're going to destroy everything our family has built over 3 generations. she screamed, her words tumbling over each other. Howard's having chest pains because of you. Is that what you wanted? To put our father in the hospital? I remained deliberately calm, feeling an odd sense of detachment as I let her rant, her voice echoing off my apartment's exposed brick walls. The sun streamed through my windows, catching dust particles in its beams, creating an ironically peaceful backdrop to her hysteria. The solution is actually quite simple, Vanessa, I replied, keeping my voice steady and professional. Return my investment with fair interest. $850,000 plus 8% over 8 months. You have an MBA from Wharton, Vanessa. Surely you can calculate the exact figure without difficulty. That money went into saving this vineyard, your family heritage too. Her breath came in short bursts. And now you want to bankrupt us to get it back? You're being utterly selfish. She paused, and I could practically hear her regrouping, her voice suddenly turning smooth and calculated. Besides, your high-priced lawyer should understand that verbal agreements in family businesses are legally complicated. You can't actually prove anything substantial. I smiled, though she couldn't see it, feeling a surge of satisfaction warm my chest. Actually, I just got off the phone with Trevor. Remember him? Your accountant with the ethics? He's provided a sworn statement detailing the day I made the transfer, about how he repeatedly advised putting our agreement in writing, and how Howard explicitly promised me a secured leadership position in the business. He even has notes from the meeting. The line went eerily silent for a moment, the only sound her shallow breathing. Hold on, she finally muttered. Howard wants to talk to you. Right now. My father's voice came through, strained and tight with barely controlled fury. Elaine, what the hell do you think you're doing to this family after everything we've done for you? Have you lost all sense of loyalty? Everything you've done for me? I cut him off, feeling years of resentment bubbling up, like fermenting wine. Let's talk about that honestly for once. While you paid for Vanessa's education, her prestigious MBA, her luxury car, her downtown condo, I built my own life from nothing. I worked 2 jobs to pay for my master's degree. I took out student loans. The only time I ever asked your help for anything was when you promised me a future at River's Edge in exchange for literally saving the vineyard you mismanaged. We never promised you control. His voice rose sharply. Vanessa has the formal business education for this role. You're just an analyst. Just an analyst? I laughed bitterly, the sound harsh even to my own ears. I've consulted for some of the most successful vineyards in the country. But that's irrelevant now. I'm not asking for control anymore. I interrupted as he tried to speak again. I'm asking for my money back. Money you took knowing exactly what you planned to do with it. My money that paid off your debts. He switched tactics suddenly, his voice softening to that cajoling tone he'd used whenever he wanted something from me as a child. Sweetheart, please be reasonable. The vineyard simply doesn't have that kind of liquid capital right now. We'd have to take out another substantial loan. It would cripple operations. Then I suggest you start talking to banks immediately. I replied coldly, unmoved by the familiar manipulation. You have 25 days left before I file the lawsuit and notify the industry press. And Howard? Every single financial decision made since. My investment will be thoroughly scrutinized, including the new Mercedes Vanessa's driving as a company car and that research trip you and Diana took to Tuscany last month. I could hear muffled, heated conversation in the background, the words indistinct, but the tone unmistakably panicked. Then Diana came on the line, her voice dripping with that honeyed concern she perfected over the years. Elaine, please, darling, she begged, the quaver in her voice perfectly pitched. Come over for dinner tomorrow night. We can talk about this as a family. There's always a solution when family comes together. My fingers tightened around the phone. We're not family right now, Diana. We're business associates in a financial dispute. Have your lawyer call Naomi with your formal response. That's the only conversation I'm interested in having. I hung up, my hands trembling slightly with the adrenaline coursing through me. My phone immediately lit up with a barrage of messages from aunts, uncles, and cousins, ranging from angry accusations of betrayal to sanctimonious pleas for family peace. I ignored them all and opened my laptop, starting methodical research on available vineyard properties in the next county, one with superior elevation and better water rights. Soon, River's Edge would have serious competition from someone who actually understood viticulture. The following week brought a bombshell I hadn't anticipated. Trevor, the accountant, called requesting an urgent meeting, his voice tight with tension. We arranged to meet at a small French cafe in a quiet neighborhood far from any wine industry hangouts, where no one would recognize us. When I arrived, Trevor was already seated in the farthest corner, hunched over his coffee. The folder clutched in his white-knuckled grip looked ready to burst at the seams. His eyes constantly darted toward the door, a thin sheen of sweat visible on his forehead despite the cafe's powerful air conditioning. "There's something critical you need to see," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, as he nervously surveyed our surroundings before sliding the bulging folder across the table. "I've been meticulously reviewing the books since your investment came in. The financial patterns, they're deeply troubling. The numbers don't just bend the truth, they shatter it completely." I opened the folder to find detailed financial records, color-coded spreadsheets, and transaction logs, all organized with the precision only a dedicated accountant could manage. Trevor leaned forward, pointing to several neon-highlighted entries, his finger trembling slightly. "Your $850,000 didn't just save the vineyard from foreclosure as they claimed. It also funded an entire series of personal expenses that were deliberately misclassified as legitimate business costs," he explained, flipping through pages of evidence. "The new Mercedes S-Class is logged as a delivery and client relations vehicle. The 2-week Tuscany trip as essential market research and vendor negotiations. Even Vanessa's final MBA semester had portions retroactively backdated as employee executive education expenses after your money arrived." My hands tightened around my coffee cup so fiercely I feared it might shatter. The ceramic burned against my skin, but the pain felt distant compared to the betrayal washing over me. They systematically used my investment for all this personal luxury while telling me the vineyard was on the brink of collapse? Trevor nodded grimly, running a hand through his thinning hair. "There's something even worse. 2 weeks before they publicly announced Vanessa as CEO, they quietly registered a new corporate entity, River's Edge Premium Holdings LC. They've been systematically transferring the vineyard's most valuable assets, the award-winning South Vineyard blocks, the premium wine inventory, the distribution contracts, everything of real value, to this new entity, where your name doesn't appear anywhere in the documentation." He flipped to a complex organizational chart he'd created. "The original vineyard company, the one you actually invested in, it's being methodically hollowed out, left with the debts and underperforming assets. Your name has been quite literally erased from every document relating to the new company." The realization hit me like a truck at harvest time. They weren't just dismissing my contribution. They were executing a calculated plan to ensure I couldn't claim anything. The vineyard I'd saved with everything I had would soon be nothing but an empty shell, a corporate husk stripped of value. "Your attorney needs to examine every page of this immediately," Trevor said, his voice dropping even lower as an elderly couple was seated nearby. "But for my protection, you didn't get this from me. I'm already discreetly interviewing for positions in other states. I cannot remain associated with this level of financial manipulation. It crosses every ethical line in my profession." I reached for my phone to call Naomi, my fingers trembling with a mixture of rage and vindication, but it buzzed first with a text from Vanessa. "Emergency family meeting tonight at 7. Come alone, no lawyers. Last chance to resolve this like Williams before things get irreparably damaged." I showed Trevor the message, the timing too perfect to be coincidental. He shook his head, his expression grim. "They must have discovered I've been examining the records. Standard crisis management playbook. They're going to try to emotionally manipulate you into backing down while simultaneously threatening my career. I thought back to similar family meetings from childhood when Vanessa had gotten into trouble with her reckless behavior. Howard and Dinah had always skillfully shifted blame, somehow transforming me into the unreasonable one for not protecting my younger sister or understanding her creative spirit. My response was brief and direct. Any discussion must include both our legal representatives. Non-negotiable. Vanessa's response flashed almost immediately. Your choice, but don't come crying to us when this gets extremely ugly. Some things can't be undone. With steady hands, I called Naomi and began sending high-resolution photos of Trevor's meticulously organized documents. Her sharp intake of breath when she saw the financial transfers told me everything I needed to know. This is precisely the evidence I've been searching for, she said, her voice tight, with controlled excitement. They've committed multiple serious financial improprieties and corporate fraud. We're not just discussing a civil suit anymore. This documentation could potentially lead to criminal charges. I don't want to see them in jail, I said quickly, surprising myself, with a protective instinct that still lingered. I just want my investment returned in full. Then we'll use this as powerful leverage, Naomi replied confidently. I'm drafting an amended demand letter now. Instead of 30 days, they have 48 hours to either return your money with full interest or face a formal investigation that will involve the SEC and the Banking Commission. The choice is entirely theirs to make. After hanging up, I remained in the cafe long after Trevor left, staring at the damning evidence spread before me. Part of me felt a twinge of guilt for what this could potentially do to my family. But another part, the part that remembered every casual dismissal, every time they'd openly favored Vanessa, every sacrifice I'd made to help them, while receiving nothing but taken for granted obligation in return, felt a cold, vindicating satisfaction spreading through my chest. My phone continuously buzzed with increasingly frantic messages from Howard, Diana, and Vanessa. I silenced it completely and opened my laptop instead, pulling up the real estate listing I'd been researching. Hillcrest Vineyard. 175 acres of prime vineyard land with superior elevation and water rights just across the valley from river's edge. Perfect soil composition for premium varietals, excellent southern sun exposure, and most importantly, a commanding view overlooking my family's property. The amended demand letter struck river's edge with the destructive force of a late-season hailstorm. I was analyzing soil composition reports during a virtual tour of Hillcrest Vineyard when my security system pinged, showing Howard in the hallway outside my apartment. Seconds later, he burst through my door without knocking, brandishing the letter like it was evidence of treason. Criminal charges? He bellowed, his face flushed crimson, veins visibly throbbing at his temples. Against your own blood family? Is this who you become? I raised you better than this, Elaine. I calmly minimized the browser window displaying Hillcrest's south-facing slopes, with their perfect drainage patterns. My heart hammered in my chest, but I refused to show it. Did you raise me to accept being systematically robbed and erased? Because that's exactly what you did. Took my $850,000 and used it to fund luxury cars and Italian research vacations while methodically plotting to cut me out of the business entirely. We never meant, he started, his voice dropping to a defensive tone I recognized from childhood excuses. Save your rehearsed explanations. I cut him off coldly. I've seen all the financial records. The secret LC, the calculated asset transfers, everything, Howard. The dates, the signatures, your methodical planning. You didn't just betray me. You executed a premeditated plan to ensure I couldn't possibly fight back. I stood up, looking him directly in the eyes. You have precisely 40 hours left to return my investment with full interest, or Naomi files everything with the SEC and the Banking Commission. The color drained from his face so rapidly I thought he might faint. You'd actually destroy your sister's future out of spite? She just started as CEO. This would ruin her career before it even begins. Vanessa's future? I laughed. This sound harsh even to my own ears. What about mine? I earned that money by analyzing agricultural markets 60 hours a week, while she was staging vineyard photo shoots for her Instagram followers. Money you explicitly promised would secure my leadership position in the family business. We can still find a reasonable compromise, he pleaded, his hands spread in supplication. Maybe Vanessa could share the CEO position with you, a co-leadership arrangement reflecting both your strengths. I shook my head firmly. I don't want to share leadership with Vanessa, not anymore. I want my money back, every single penny plus interest. Then you'll never have to worry about me interfering with your precious new CEO's vision again. His eyes narrowed suspiciously at my emphasis on again, his business instincts finally overriding paternal manipulation. What exactly does that mean? Just then, my phone buzzed with perfect dramatic timing. The screen showed it was the real estate agent handling Hillcrest Vineyard. I answered, deliberately putting it on speaker. Hi Elaine, I have excellent news. The owners are extremely interested in your offer. They're particularly impressed with your comprehensive soil revitalization plan and vision for elevating the vineyard's production to premium status. When can you meet to discuss final terms? I watched Howard's face crumple as realization dawned, his expression morphing from confusion to shock to genuine fear. He knew Hillcrest wasn't just any property. It was River's Edge's main competition during my grandfather William's era. Their wines had consistently won more prestigious awards until the owner retired, and the vineyard fell into neglect. You wouldn't dare, he whispered, his voice barely audible. Wouldn't what? Start my own premium vineyard? Apply my expertise to compete directly with the business that methodically stole from me? I leaned forward, my voice intensifying. I learned everything about winemaking from William, Howard. Everything. While Vanessa was studying theoretical business cases, I was analyzing soil composition and tracking seasonal weather patterns with Grandpa at my side. William would be deeply ashamed of this betrayal, he said, attempting one final emotional manipulation. My laugh felt like it came from somewhere deep inside me. No, he'd be tremendously proud. Proud? I'm not letting you and Vanessa destroy everything he built with your financial schemes and marketing gimmicks. I turned back toward my laptop decisively. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a vineyard property to acquire. Tick-tock on those 40 hours, Howard. He left without another word, slamming the door so hard my framed viticulture certificate rattled on the wall. Within minutes, my phone exploded with messages from Vanessa. How dare you threaten Dad like this? He nearly collapsed in the car. You're just jealous of my success. Mom hasn't stopped crying because of you. I blocked her number without hesitation and returned to the Hillcrest listing, examining the property specs with renewed determination. The vineyard needed significant work to restore it to its former glory, but I could envision exactly how to transform it. More importantly, its superior elevation, premium grape potential, and exceptional water rights would enable me to produce wines that would directly outclass River's Edge's flagship varieties. My phone buzzed again. Naomi this time. They're absolutely scrambling, she reported, satisfaction evident in her voice. Just received a frantic call from their newly retained lawyer. They're desperately trying to secure an emergency loan from 3 different banks simultaneously. I smiled, feeling a sense of calm certainty wash over me. Either way, I emerged victorious. Either I recovered my money with interest, or I acquired Hillcrest Vineyard, and River's Edge would discover what genuine competition from someone with actual viticultural knowledge felt like. With precisely 12 hours remaining on the deadline, Dana appeared unannounced at my downtown office. She carried a thick manila envelope clutched against her designer blouse and wore that familiar expression of pained patience I'd seen countless times when she played peacemaker between Vanessa and me throughout our childhood. Howard had to be sedated by his doctor, she announced dramatically, sinking into the chair across from my desk with a theatrical sigh. Her perfume, too strong for the small space, filled the air between us. His blood pressure shot so high the doctor was concerned about stroke risk. Are you satisfied now that you've put your father in medical danger? My face remained perfectly neutral, a technique I'd learned from years of high-stakes agricultural investment negotiations. What's in the envelope, Diana? She slid it across my polished desk, her manicured fingers lingering on it for dramatic effect. The absolute best we can possibly do under these impossible circumstances. We've mortgaged everything we could on short notice. There's $600,000 here in certified funds. That's all any bank would give us without extensive documentation. We can pay the remainder in monthly installments with interest. I didn't even touch the envelope, letting it sit like a barrier between us. That wasn't our agreement. $850,000 plus 8% interest, the entire amount, or Naomi files the formal complaint tomorrow morning. The terms haven't changed. We simply don't have it. She snapped, her carefully constructed peacemaker facade cracking wide open. Vanessa has been frantically calling every financial institution in Texas. Nobody will extend us further credit without wanting to thoroughly audit the books first. And you know perfectly well we cannot allow that now. Because of what they'd find? I asked, my voice deliberately quiet but cutting. Like documentation showing how you misappropriated my investment to retroactively pay for Vanessa's MBA instead of saving the Vineyard from foreclosure as promised? Or perhaps the elaborate asset shifting scheme you've been executing through that new LC? Diana's face went completely still, color draining from her cheeks. How could you possibly know about? I have comprehensive copies of everything, Diana, I interrupted calmly. Every transaction, every transfer, every falsified business expense, every backdated document. Did you honestly believe no one would notice or care? That I would just accept being systematically erased from the business my grandfather built? She leaned forward, abruptly switching tactics with the skill of a lifelong manipulator. Think carefully about what you're doing, Elaine. If you file those damning papers, it won't just hurt our immediate family. The Vineyard's hard-earned reputation will be permanently ruined. All those loyal people who depend on River's Edge for their livelihood, the field workers, the seller's staff, the distributors, their families, you would devastate all their lives just to spite your sister out of petty jealousy. Don't you dare attempt to put this moral burden on me, I said, my voice hardening like steel. You and Howard deliberately chose this destructive path the moment you decided to take my money under false pretenses. You're the ones who put everyone's jobs at risk through your deception, not me. We didn't steal anything, she began defensively, but I cut her off with a sharp wave of my hand. Let me show you something quite interesting. I turned my laptop around, displaying the detailed Hillcrest property listing with its professionally photographed aerial views. Beautiful, isn't it? Premium volcanic soil, perfect south-facing elevation, superior water rights, and enough fertile acreage to potentially triple River's Edge's production capacity with proper management. The current owner has already verbally accepted my offer and scheduled the final signing for tomorrow morning, unless I receive my complete investment back first. Diana's eyes widened with genuine horror as she recognized the property and its strategic importance. You wouldn't dare. That land, acquiring, it would absolutely destroy everything we've built. Then I strongly suggest you and Vanessa get remarkably creative in the next 11 hours. I replied coldly. Sell her Mercedes, further mortgage your house, liquidate investments, call in every outstanding favor. I genuinely don't care how you accomplish it, but I want every penny of my money returned by the deadline. She stood up shakily, her hand gripping the chair for support. You've changed fundamentally, Elaine. You've become hard, calculating, cruel. What happened to my compassionate daughter? No, Diana. I haven't changed at all. I've simply stopped allowing you to manipulate and exploit me. The complete repayment or the lawsuit, with all its consequences, those are your only options now. The choice is entirely yours. After she left, her designer heels clicking rapidly down the hallway. I immediately called Naomi to update her. They attempted to negotiate, I reported. Offered partial payment of $600,000 with installments for the remainder. Stay absolutely firm, she advised confidently. From what my industry contacts are hearing, they're truly desperate. Their lawyer has been frantically calling banks and private lenders all day without success. Just then, my email notification sounded. A new message from the Hillcrest Vineyard realtor. Owner extremely eager to close quickly. Can meet first thing tomorrow to sign all paperwork. Excited about your vision for revitalizing this historic property. I smiled with satisfaction and wrote back confirming the early morning meeting. Then I texted Vanessa with deliberate brevity. 11 hours remaining. Tick-tock. Her response arrived within seconds. You're making a catastrophic mistake you'll regret forever. Howard's lawyer says we can tie this up in court for years while we operate normally. I replied with a single powerful image. The panoramic view from Hillcrest's highest ridge, looking directly down over River's Edge's main vineyard blocks. She'd immediately recognize it from the dozens of carefully posed Instagram photos she'd taken there over the years, always careful to capture the family estate in the background. Her immediate response was nothing but a string of furious emojis followed by, "You wouldn't dare compete against your own family." The clock was steadily ticking down, and I had them exactly where I wanted them, caught between their pride and their survival. With just 2 hours until the final deadline expired, I sat in Naomi's sleek downtown office, reviewing the detailed paperwork for both potential outcomes. The comprehensive SEC filing with its damning evidence, and the Hillcrest Vineyard purchase agreement with its promising future. The sun was setting over the Dallas skyline outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting the evening sky in rich burgundy and gold tones that reminded me of our reserve Cabernet harvest. My heart pounded steadily in my chest as I contemplated how quickly life could change trajectories. Everything I'd worked for was crystallizing into this pivotal moment. Their legal team has called 5 times in just the last hour, Naomi reported, checking her messages with a satisfied expression. They're absolutely desperate. Also, someone named Blake Reynolds from First National Agricultural Bank has been persistently trying to reach you directly. I sat up straighter, suddenly alert. Blake Reynolds was Vanessa's serious boyfriend from business school, the one who'd ended their relationship after growing tired of her constant demands and social media obsession. He now worked as a senior agricultural loan officer specializing in vineyard financing. Before I could formulate a response, my phone illuminated with an urgent text from Trevor. Emergency board meeting underway at River's Edge. Complete chaos here. Vanessa locked herself in the executive bathroom sobbing. Diana is threatening to reveal something about Howard's past management decisions if he doesn't resolve this immediately. Howard looks physically ill. I felt a strange mixture of vindication and regret wash over me, but pushed the conflicting emotions aside to focus on the strategic opportunity. I called Blake, who answered on the first ring. I've been reviewing River's Edge's financial records as part of their emergency loan application, he said without preamble, his voice professionally measured. The documentation shows serious irregularities that make approval impossible without conducting a comprehensive audit. However, there's another potential solution. Our bank has a specialized division looking to invest in family-owned wineries with growth potential. They would require complete financial transparency and restructuring, but your parents would receive more than just a standard loan. They'd get expertise and industry connections. My mind raced through the implications. I carefully texted Howard. There's a solution that doesn't involve me or the SEC. Call Blake Reynolds at First National Agricultural immediately. You have exactly 90 minutes remaining. Vanessa's response arrived within seconds. You think allowing some soulless bank to take control is better than keeping this in the family? You're systematically destroying Grandpa William's entire legacy. I stared at her message, thinking about our grandfather William, about the countless hours he'd spent patiently teaching me about soil composition and vine management, while Vanessa remained indoors scrolling through social media. His final words to me echoed with painful clarity in my mind. The Vines don't give a damn about fancy business degrees, Ellie. They respond to knowledge, respect, and consistent hard work. Just 1 hour remaining, Naomi noted quietly, her pen tapping against her legal pad. What's your next move? With 30 minutes left before the deadline, Trevor's updates became increasingly frequent and detailed. Howard's reviewing contract documents with the bank representatives now. Vanessa has frantically called 5 different financial institutions in the last hour. Diana has gone through nearly an entire box of tissues, while making emotional appeals to board members. I kept my phone within reach, waiting with outward calm despite the tension coiling inside me. The $850,000 had transformed into something far beyond mere money. It represented accountability for their deliberate actions and choices. Naomi worked methodically across from me, preparing both sets of legal documentation with meticulous care. Then Howard's name appeared on my phone screen. The bank's terms are extremely stringent, he said without greeting, his voice rough with emotion and exhaustion. They demand complete control of all financial decisions for a minimum of 5 years, plus 2 permanent board seats, with veto power over executive appointments. We'd essentially be answering to outside strangers about our family business. Better competent strangers than manipulative thieves, I replied with ice in my voice. 20 minutes remaining on the deadline. If we accept this, if we allow the bank to take control of our financial operations, will you withdraw everything else? No SEC filing? No competing vineyard across the valley? I leaned forward, choosing my words with precision. Sign the agreement with the bank. Transfer my complete investment with the agreed interest immediately, and I'll walk away. You'll never have to worry about me competing with your precious CEO again. He fell silent for what felt like an eternity. Diana thinks we should simply call your bluff, he finally said, his voice strained. She insists you won't actually file with the SEC, that deep down you're too soft-hearted to follow through. 15 minutes remaining to discover if she's right, I replied calmly. Tick-tock, Howard. I ended the call and turned to Naomi. Prepare the SEC filing for immediate submission. But before she could reach for the comprehensive file, my phone buzzed with an incoming email from Blake Reynolds. Subject line: Agreements executed. Confirmation of funds transfer. The attached files showed my parents' signatures on the bank's comprehensive oversight agreement, alongside a transfer confirmation for $850,000 plus the full 8% interest directly to my account. It appears they ultimately chose survival over pride, Naomi observed with professional satisfaction. I nodded silently, already pulling up another real estate listing on my phone. The Sunridge Vineyard across the valley from Hillcrest was also available with even better water rights, superior soil composition for Bordeaux varietals, and a significantly lower asking price due to the owner's divorce situation. 3 months later, I stood on the gently sloping hills of my newly acquired property, Elaine Estates Vineyard, with its perfect southern exposure, microclimates ideal for multiple varietals, and soil so rich it crumbled perfectly between my fingers. The clear view of river's edge across the valley wasn't just a coincidence, it was a daily reminder of how drastically life could change when you finally stood up for yourself. The morning sun warmed my face as I surveyed what would soon become the region's premier vineyard. I'd used the returned $850,000 plus interest as the down payment, with a consortium of agricultural investors eagerly backing my venture after reviewing my detailed business and cultivation plans. Trevor had resigned from River's Edge the day after the bank assumed financial control, and I'd immediately hired him as my CFO, along with several other talented staff members who'd followed him. Vanessa is having another public meltdown, Trevor reported, glancing at his phone, with a barely suppressed smile. The Bank Oversight Committee unanimously rejected her elaborate proposal for that Mediterranean-style tasting room complex, said something about prioritizing unnecessary cosmetic expenses over fundamental quality improvements. and redirecting resources to Vineyard infrastructure instead. I smiled, recalling details I'd heard about the bank's first board meeting. They'd promptly replaced the Mercedes S-Class with two practical work trucks, canceled the Italian wine tourism program Vanessa had planned, and implemented a strict approval process for all expenditures over $5,000. Her prestigious MBA credentials were proving remarkably ineffective against experienced financial oversight and agricultural business reality. Diana still sent predictable weekly text messages about healing family wounds and finding our way back to each other, which I consistently left unanswered. Howard hadn't spoken directly to me since signing the bank agreement, but last week I'd received a package that conveyed more meaning than any words possibly could. William's weathered leather-bound notebook, a Vineyard wisdom, filled with decades of his meticulous handwritten notes about soil composition, seasonal weather patterns, grafting techniques, and grape variety characteristics. This simple note enclosed read, "This belongs with someone who truly understands its value. Howard." I held that precious notebook now, its worn leather warm in my hands as I stood among the vineyard rows we'd begin transforming tomorrow. In 3 years, these carefully selected vines would produce their first harvestable grapes. In 5 years, Elaine Estates would be competing directly with River's Edge in premium wine competitions. But I no longer needed their approval or validation. I had something infinitely more valuable, the opportunity to build my own legacy, one that honored my grandfather's true vision of winemaking excellence. The local wine association had already invited me to give the keynote address at next month's industry conference, focusing on sustainable viticulture practices, a powerful vote of confidence from my peers. The soil analysis results came back even better than we hoped, Trevor said, joining me at the property's highest point. The calcium-magnesium ratio is perfect for those Bordeaux varietals you wanted to focus on. I nodded, already envisioning the wines these slopes would produce. In the distance, the field team was unloading equipment, preparing for tomorrow's first major planting day. "Ready to start transforming this land?" Trevor asked, gesturing toward the waiting crew and the thousands of carefully selected rootstock vines that had arrived that morning. I tucked William's irreplaceable notebook securely into my jacket, feeling his presence and approval as clearly as the sun on my face. My fingers traced the embossed letters of Elaine Estates on my new work jacket. "Let's make extraordinary wine," I replied with quiet confidence. Turning toward the future I was finally free to create.